It's no secret that Polk County is home to some of the most striking natural scenery in the state of Florida, and the Board of County Commissioners here in Polk County is dedicated to responsibly conserving our natural assets. Today, I'm in the PGTV studios joined by County Commissioner Becky Troutman, Parks and Natural Resources Division Director Tabitha Biehl, and Mason Gravley from the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining me here today. Mason, I'd like to start with you. Can you explain what the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation is and what your mission is?
Yes, our mission is to champion a collaborative campaign, lots of different stakeholders to protect or connect, protect, and restore the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And that, you may have heard that phrase, it's a connected landscape all the way from the Everglades up to Georgia and Alabama, like actually physically connected landscape of 18 million acres.
Wow. And
it's for wildlife, it's for water. There's a number of reasons it's important. It's where a lot of rural land still exists. About 10 million of those 18 million acres are protected. So we're working on those last 8 million acres to get under some form of conservation.
And Commissioner Troutman, you recently had the chance to get out there and experience some of these areas. Talk about that.
I did. I had the privilege of being one of 4 of elected officials that went on a trip. We started actually in Thomasville, Georgia, and we went down to St. Mark's Lighthouse and spent time in wild Florida.
Wow. And wild Florida, you know, that's something that you hear about, and some people might think, oh, wild Florida's gone, it's been developed. But really, you know, this is a state and a county that's worked hard to preserve our natural lands. Talk about why that's important to the Board of County Commissioners.
Well, I mean, land, you're not going to get it back. Once it's developed, you will never get back the 100-year-old oak trees. You won't get back the beauty and the serenity that it provides. And not only is it beautiful, but underneath that, it helps recharge our aquifer, and it's vitally important to the health of our state. And so the more we can conserve, the better quality of life is for most individuals.
Absolutely, and we think about the food chain and the way that water moves through the state, and everything's connected. Mm-hmm. Director Biehl, I'm interested as to how the conservation of natural lands, you know, plays into your mission as the director of the Parks and Natural Resources Division.
So here in Polk County, we've been very blessed to have a community that supports conservation. So starting back in 1994, there was a grassroots effort that the citizens actually voted back then to tax themselves to set funds aside to purchase conservation lands to protect the water, wildlife, and wilderness of Polk County. That was a 20-year program. It was quite successful. Over 26,000 acres were protected. It sunset in 2014. Then coming up to 2022, another grassroots effort was like, hey, development was rapidly going. We're starting to see these corridors that we're talking about for sustainability, long-term resilience, starting to be broken. And we realized, hey, there's a need to continue that acquisition program. So again, a grassroots effort with support of the commissioners, put back out in the ballot, and the citizens once again voted to tax themselves a 0.02 ad valorem on their property tax to set funds aside for the acquisition and management. This time though, it was just water, wildlife, and wilderness. We added working landscapes to recognize the value of the agricultural community here in Polk County. Has a huge, rich history with the cattle industry and other agricultural users, and the importance that they play in making these connections through the wildlife corridor.
And that's something that I think people might not initially realize. They hear the word conservation and they think that it's all preservation. They think that it's about leaving these lands untouched. But in reality, a lot of the work that you do is with lands that have been used for agricultural purposes. They have been modified by humans in some way. And you know, we're ensuring that that is part of the natural landscape that we're preserving, right? Most
definitely. A lot of what the corridor does is based on some of our mammals that are large ranging and seeing the movements that they make, whether it's black bear, panther, bobcat, those kind of things. We've even used coyote tracking to see how they're using the landscape to move back and forth. And they don't just stay in the wooded area and get to the edge of the fence and be like, oh no, turning back around, there's citrus trees. They move in and out of those citrus, use them very well. Cattle ranching is home to a lot of these larger mammal species and a lot of other wildlife species. And so there's value in those working landscapes. And we make great neighbors. The agricultural community and the conservation lands that are left at a more natural state make amazing neighbors and protect these corridors, which gives a bigger benefit to cleaning our water and protecting our water and our recharge all at the same time.
So how have you worked with people like Mason and organizations like the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation?
Well, I mean, the Florida Wildlife Corridor really sets in motion a statewide vision. And so it was really sort of I call it one of the best statewide planning programs that we have in place. A lot of times we're planning at a city level or planning at a county level, but just in the unincorporated areas. And the Wildlife Corridor doesn't look at those geographic boundaries. It takes a look at the state of those areas that we need to protect for these wildlife corridors. And so we work with them. They have a series of educational outreach opportunities and conferences where they bring networks of different landowners and entities together and created what they called a Mind the Gaps. And here in Polk County, I believe we have 5 gaps.
Yeah.
I believe we have 5 gaps, which are areas in the corridor that are threatened because they're very thin or they could be broken very easily. And from a statewide scale, it's impressive to see how important Polk County is because we have 5 of these areas where the whole corridor could break within Polk County. Or we have the opportunity to champion the corridor and make those and secure those corridors. That's what we're working to do with the Wildlife Corridor.
And Mr. Gravley, this is not about stopping development or stopping developers from doing, what they're going to do. It's about working with them, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think if you dial back 30 years ago, a lot of people would never have thought working lands, ranches, and citrus grove owners could work so in tandem with conservation. But now that they're basically holding hands walking down this path because of that. Yes, they work hand in hand. And I do want to say Tabitha is right that the Corridor Foundation is all about sharing that statewide vision, really making the corridor a household name. It's really up to folks like Tabitha who are focused on an area like Polk County and the folks you work with, the landowners here, decision makers like Becky, to actually make the corridor protected. So we do the promotion of the vision, we do the sharing of the information, but it's these local entities that get the work done in the long run. So we couldn't be more thankful to work in such a great place. Polk is so instrumental to the corridor, so it's great to have such great people here working on it so hard.
Could you give us some examples or some idea of how what happens in Polk in terms of our natural lands affects other counties around the state and other states around the nation?
So when you look at the map of the corridor, like I said, 10 million acres of it is protected, 8 million acres is left to protect. And about 80% of that 8 million acres is working lands, some sort of business happening on those lands. And you look at the south side of the state, big chunks, the Everglades, a couple million acres right there protected. North side of the state, Apalachicola National Forest, Osceola, there's a ton of huge green areas. In that central part of the state, that I-4 corridor, is just exploding with growth. I grew up in Polk County. It's an awesome place to live. I can't blame people for wanting to live here. But this region, this central Florida region, can really make or break this vision. So it's really important for folks in Polk to know just how big the implications are for the decisions around making these physical connections in the land. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely.
Driving home the importance of Polk and Central Florida to this vision. That's also gaining attention from other regions. We did our expedition up in Georgia because they're so interested in learning how do we get a corridor. North Carolina's working on a corridor. States out west are working on corridors. Other countries are, but nowhere in the world's really implementing it. So boots on the ground, day to day working on it with so many partners and so many stakeholders in different areas like Florida is. So it's a really, really interesting and cool time to be working in conservation, and how we go about conducting or completing this vision is going to have implications globally, which is pretty wild to think about, but it's true.
There you have it, folks. Polk County is the center not only of Florida, but also of the world. So,
it's on record. Yes. Breaking news.
This is why they're moving here.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Commissioner Troutman, what did you learn? What were your takeaways from your expedition and being able to see the wildlife corridor up close?
There were many takeaways, but I think just about anybody in the community that knows me knows that I'm a staunch supporter of property rights. And so probably some people ask, why is she going on this trip? And my biggest takeaway was really how the Corridor Foundation wants to work with development and realizing we're not here to stop. We're not here to legislate and say you have to do X, Y, and Z. And to me, that's very important. So the takeaway of realizing what a wonderful partner they are, that as Polk continues to grow, if we bring the landowners to the table, help share the mission and the vision of the wildlife corridor, I truly think that we can protect these vulnerable areas without much of a challenge.
Absolutely. Mason, I'd like to know, what are your goals in the future for the Florida Wildlife Corridor and for Polk County and its role in the corridor?
You know, I thought Becky's takeaway was going to be the fact we took showers away from her for a week.
Very true.
Yeah, it was wild, and there's going to be a film out. So we promote the vision of the corridor. One of the ways we do that is these things called expeditions, and the films that come out about them to promote some region of the corridor and really visually show people what it actually looks like in wild Florida. A lot of people don't realize there's more to Florida than beaches and Disney, which are wonderful things, but that's like loving the frame of a picture and not necessarily the picture itself. They both can be beautiful, and they are. But to go back to your question, our goals is to go back to our mission, actually make a physically connected space. So a lot of people think conservation, protection of land is good, thumbs up, and that was maybe the philosophy for the past 150 years. But really this next phase of conservation philosophy is connecting the places. Because if you've got a place like the Green Swamp or Circle B and they're surrounded by concrete, those basically become zoos without fences. And those animals in there are kind of stuck there. The plants even are stuck there. Birds need corridors just as much as mammals do a lot of the times. But also the water needs the ability to move between them. Human communities are only as healthy as their ability to connect with other communities. Infrastructure and roads, information exchange, trades, trading goods and services. The green side of life, or the wild side of life, operates very similarly. So our overall goal is to make sure the connection happens.
Absolutely. I suspect that a lot of our viewers and a lot of our residents are going to resonate with this message. And where can they go to find out more? FloridaWildlifeCorridor.org. You can learn a lot. You can watch our past films. This is our 8th expedition that took place in April up in North Florida. Becky is one of the main characters of that film, so her and 3 other commissioners. That film will be out in the fall, so be following along for that. And also, I would point you more locally to Tabitha's work.
Yeah, so you can visit the county website at polkfl.gov, and there's information on the website to get you to our Parks and Natural Resources Division. And give us a call. We'd love to talk to you if you're a landowner that's interested. If you're a developer who's say, hey, I like this concept. And the other great thing that the Wildlife Corridor has come out with is Corridor Compatible Communities Development Guide. So there are ways to still develop your landscape, be very attractable to your market, but also provide some buffer for these conservation corridors. And we'd love to talk to you more about that and engage in those too.
Excellent. Well, Director Biehl, Mr. Gravley, Commissioner Troutman, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciated getting to learn more about the Florida Wildlife Corridor.
Absolutely.
Thank
you.
Awesome.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.